he released a kind of State of the Union Chicago Mob 2025 video this week, and I want to follow that up with a video discussing the last Chicago outfit mob murders, the final hits, if you will. And I don't know if there ever will be another Chicago mob murder. There hasn't been one in 16 years, and at least most likely. There is definitely the possibility that there have been some homicides that we don't know are connected to the outfit or haven't been established as fact. But I believe the three that I'm going to discuss today that all trace back to a 10-month period in 2009, that these are all outfit related, connected to two of the four remaining Chicago mob crews, connected to some of the top guys that are still in the game, some of the Chicago mob OGs. And I want to break these homicides down, kind of give some context to them, but also I want to preface it with, I don't see these murders, or in one case, a disappearance, ever being solved. I don't see arrests. I don't see indictments. So, just kind of let's address the elephant in the room with that. And I don't think that, we're going to be delicate with how we talk about certain people in these stories. And I'm not going to cast aspersions without proper support. So we might not always be naming names here, but I just want to let everybody know, based on what I know from talking to people in the government, the people that investigate this stuff, there are going to be no indictments or digs or arrests made regarding these three Chicago outfit hits that, again, could be the last three, possibly in a storied history of violence for this group. This is an organization that has a legacy of lethality, and within that lethality, a lot of brutality. And this was a very, very violent group from, Prohibition era, beginning of LCN in 1931, all the way through I would say the early 2000s, mid 2000s. Definitely started to dissipate in the 90s, but a lot of bodies. And as we know, in America, the Mafia has stopped killing people, so we don't really deal with that anymore. And as a result, they've gone down on the priority list of the federal government. We don't see as many busts, but that's something that we're an ongoing subject. So that we've been talking about, and we'll continue to talk about how the Mafia in the United States has evolved and changed, and it hasn't disappeared. Still there, still formidable, just different. But today I want to talk about 2009. Let's get into the time machine. Let's go back 16 years, and just deep dive this 10-month period of violence and gangland murder. So what I'm talking about, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that already know this, but for the people that don't, I'm talking about the murders of Tony Catalano, Norberto Velez, and Mike DeFilippis. And all three of them were connected one way, shape, or form to the Chicago Mafia. Some higher up the ladder than others. And we're not positive about any connections between the three of them. Personally, some of the lead up narrative to their homicides dovetail in regards to what was going on in their backstory, but we don't have any definitive connections between these three individuals, but they were all killed in 2009. In the case of Tony Catalano, who will be the first person we talk about, he disappeared. Has never been seen. Body's never been found. Last seen leaving his apartment off Bryn Mawr Avenue on March 25th. And in 2009, never seen again, vanishes off the face of the earth. And, Catalano is, we've been talking about cautionary tales. He is a cautionary tale. He's a guy that exhibited a lot of behavior and then nobody deserves to get killed, but that led to his demise. And we're gonna go over that now. So Tony Catalano grew up in Elk Grove. Was a hustler type personality really from day one. Was dealing drugs in high school. Continued to deal drugs after high school. Was good friends and social companions, and in some cases business affiliates with a lot of Chicago mob power players, sons, grandsons, nephews, cousins. He grew up with a lot of these guys, partied with a lot of these guys, and ended up supplying a lot of these guys, and in some cases going to business with some of these guys in the drug rackets. He was a good-looking guy that liked to be out in the bar scene, dated a lot of women, dressed in fancy clothes, drove expensive cars, and liked to allegedly brag of his connections to the Cicero crew. And this is in the 2000s, and this is when the Cicero crew had the juice, had the day-to-day control of the outfit, which they have now gotten back a hold of in the last couple of years. But it was out of Cicero from about 2010 forward, regarding the day-to-day. Now it's back there, but in the 2000s, beginning with Jimmy Marcello for a short period of time, and then Mike Sarno, the day-to-day operations of the outfit were being run out of Cicero. And Catalano was allegedly doing a lot of business with Cicero in the drug world, cocaine, pills, and whatnot. And that brings us to his and Mike DeFilippis's connection to a very colorful character, somebody that, when you learn about him and see photos of him or videos of him or meet him in person, he comes off almost like a character from a Marvel movie, Marvel comic strip, and has a great, colorful nickname as well. They call him Dr. Million Pills. His real name is Joe Giacchino. Was a MD that was lost his medical license for allegedly operating one of the biggest pill mills in the nation out of a pain clinic in Melrose Park. Wasn't indicted, but was kicked out of the medical profession. And he was a guy that dresses flamboyantly, a lot of loud colors. He has, earrings, tattoos, married to a former Playboy playmate. And he's been known for, decades. When he was a practicing MD, he was known for giving out a lot of jobs to the family members of powerful Chicago outfit members. And he was employing younger Italian racketeer types like Tony Catalano and Mike DeFilippis as part of his pill mill empire. I'm also told from sourcing that Catalano had coke dealing business that he was doing with members of the Cicero crew that were protected and connected to the highest levels of the outfit and the highest levels of Cicero. So you're in the major leagues. So come late 2008, 2009, a multitude of issues coalesce to presumably end the life of Tony Catalano. Vanishes the final week of March 2009. And those three things are Dr. Million Pills is under a lot of scrutiny. They're putting the screws to him and investigating his pain management clinic voraciously. And there was a lot of people worried that Tony Catalano was out of control, acting reckless, getting high on his own supply. He had been upsetting people, from what my reporting tells me and my research tells me, by ignoring orders from certain higher ups in the Chicago Mafia to stop providing their relatives with opioid pain pills. There were a lot of outfit sons, nephews, grandsons, cousins, again, getting strung out on pain pills in the 2000s. Tony Catalano, in that social circle of guys that were, I believe he disappeared, he was 34 years old. So guys that were in their late 20s, early 30s, that were dabbling in the world of opiates. A lot of them were getting supplied by Tony Catalano. And this was, from what I understand, ruffling a lot of feathers high up the chain. And Catalano was told to stop selling to certain people. He didn't. He was, again, using his own product as well as other illicit drugs that were affecting his behavior. And then probably the final straw, from what I'm told, is that a very big shipment of drugs was hijacked, popped up missing. The numbers I've been told, anywhere between $250,000 in product, all the way up to $2 million in product. So it's probably somewhere in between, but a big shipment of cocaine and pills was stolen. And a lot of people believe that Tony Catalano was the person who stole it. So Catalano was living on borrowed time. He disappeared, again, March 25th, 2009. I'm going to talk about, again, very being deliberate in my wording, what I have heard in terms of where the order came from, where it was carried out, and where his body was taken. I've been told that this is the order to kill Tony Catalano came from very, very prominent, powerful members of the outfit. And it wasn't one guy. It was a group of guys that were, again, at the highest levels at that time, that decided to make an example out of him. I believe that Tony Catalano, in essence, lived and died in Elk Grove. He was a product of his environment. He was a Elk Grove bad boy, known in high school as such, and I'm told that he was killed in Elk Grove as well, murdered in a produce warehouse that has or had connections again to very, very powerful Chicago outfit shot callers with either connections to or leadership role in Cicero. And that his body was then disposed of in Wisconsin. So I don't think we'll ever know the answer. I don't think he'll ever be found. I don't think anybody will ever be arrested. I don't think there will be ever be any indictments. But I believe that Tony Catalano was a clear victim of Chicago mob violence in the 21st century, and there hasn't been a lot of it. Before we go any further, I just want to backtrack for a second and touch on the three big murders from the 2000s that preceded Tony Catalano, DeFilippis, and Velez. And they were all three major hits of major players. These last three were minor, very minor players in Catalano, DeFilippis, and Norberto Velez. But the guys that succumbed to outfit violence before them, in the decade before them, were all big time players. And I'm talking about Ronnie Jarrett, who was shot on his way to a funeral in 1999, ended up dying in early 2000 out of the South Side. I'm talking about Tony the Hatchet Chiaramonte, who was a crew boss in Cicero, who butted heads with Mike Sarno in an internal Cicero feud that was killed in Lyons Township in a Brown's Fried Chicken Thanksgiving of 2001. And I'm talking about the most infamous Chicago Mafia murder, disappearance, of the last 30, 40 years. Anthony Little Tony Zizzo, who was an underboss. He was a crew boss in Cicero, just like Tony the Hatchet, bumped heads with Mike Sarno and was on his way to a sit down on Rush Street with Sarno and Joe the Builder, Andriaki. Never seen again. His murder is considered an open case. It's an active investigation by the FBI. I don't think that will ever be solved either, but I think there's a much better chance of that being solved than the three that we're talking about now. But as we mentioned before, a lot of blood and guts in the Chicago outfit history. We're talking easy triple-digit bodies in decades, where you'd have 75 to 125 mob murders in a 10-year period. That started to decline. That level of violence started to decline in the 90s, even though there were murders in the 90s. One of them, Sammy Taglia, where reputed Chicago, current reputed Chicago, the godfather of Grand Avenue, the street boss, Albie the Falcon Vina, was put on trial for that Taglia murder from 92. I believe he was put on trial in 95 and beat the case. So there were murders in the 90s, and then in the 2000s you had these six, and then there's been not one body in 16 years. And again, I don't think it's hyperbole to openly question or declare, I guess in this case, declare that these are probably the last three Chicago outfit murders. Catalano, DeFilippis, and Norberto Velez. So let's move on to Velez and DeFilippis. The next murder is in November of 2009, again on Thanksgiving. So it's 8 years, I believe, after Chiramonte. Little Tony Zizzo was August of 2006. This now brings us to Thanksgiving 2009, and Norberto Velez, who went by the nickname the Tank or the Bull. He was a collector, debt collector, enforcer for the Grand Avenue crew, Albie Vina's guys. And he worked the North Side. And for people that do the Chicago mob geography, North Side was their own crew for a long time and then rolled into the Grand Avenue crew in the last 20, 25 years. But North Side falls under Grand Avenue now. So Norberto Velez was a bouncer at a popular sports bar called the Cubby Bear right outside Wrigley Field. I've been there a million times when I lived in Chicago. Going down to Wrigleyville during the summer when the Cubs are playing, it's a scene. So Cubby Bear is a staple, iconic venue, right? I want to say like right behind home plate. And Norberto Velez was a bouncer there, but he also did collections for Grand Avenue, and rumors were, and from talking again to sources and doing my research, that Velez was in debt himself, that Velez was possibly skimming off of the collections he made, and he was killed Thanksgiving evening 2009. He was killed in an apartment in Wrigleyville, close to Wrigley Field. Wrigleyville is the neighborhood that Wrigley Field is in on the north side of Chicago. And the apartment that he was killed at, that he lived at and was killed at, was an apartment building, I should say, where another member of the Grand Avenue regime resided. And that was a guy named Jeff Hollinshead, who was a burglar, drug dealer, enforcer for Grand Avenue through a relative of his, cousin, uncle, Christy the Nose Spina, who right now is kind of the day-to-day last word on Grand Avenue right now. Has been a long time Grand Avenue mob soldier going back to the days of Joey the Clown. Was one of Joey the Clown's drivers. He's Albie Vina's number one guy, or second in charge. Him and Bobby Dominic, allegedly, who's facing the tax case right now. Bobby Popcorn, Christy the Nose, his nephew, his cousin, Jeff Hollinshead, lived in the same apartment building as Norberto Velez. Hollinshead flipped, has gone in front of a number of grand juries. I don't know if he has given them information on Velez or not. I just know that not much has been, if anything, has been made of his cooperation, and that might speak to the veracity of what he's saying, that the government has not used it, hasn't weaponized it. Christy the Nose hasn't dealt with any cases tied to Hollinshead's cooperation or anything like that. So, 12 years removed from when he cut his cooperation deal, it's been pretty benign. You would think he might be able to give them information on the Velez homicide, because word on the street was that the order came from Grand Avenue. But that hasn't been the case. Let's finish up by going to the last week of 2009, and Mike DeFilippis I think he was about 30 years old and was preparing for the Christmas holiday. It's December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. He's preparing not just for the Christmas holiday, but he's preparing for a trial, a drug trial that's coming up in the first week of the new year in 2010, where he's accused of and has been indicted for moving opiates, moving pills. And there's a lot of speculation that he was possibly considering cooperating, that he had information on Dr. Million Pills and possibly Tony Catalano's disappearance and other guys in Cicero, and somebody broke into his, or he let somebody into his apartment on Grand Avenue, and he was left bludgeoned, beaten, and stabbed to death on December 23rd, 2025. There's a lot of debate about whether DeFilippis and Catalano knew each other. It's pretty locked down certain that they were both part of Dr. Giacchino, aka Dr. Million Pills, pill mill empire. But it was a sprawling network of an organization, and just because two guys around the same age from Chicago were both presumably, or if we're going to be under the assumption that they were both pushing pills for Dr. Giacchino, it doesn't necessarily mean that they knew each other. Again, it's something that's of great debate, I think, both in law enforcement as well as on the street. You have certain people that say they definitely knew each other. Some people say they were partners. Some people say that they partied together and did business together. And other people say they never knew each other, or they met a couple times but didn't really do business together and weren't guys that socialized together. So I don't think we'll ever know. I think it could make sense if you're just, playing the Law and Order SVU game, or CSI game, that if DeFilippis had been involved in Catalano's kidnapping and disappearance and murder, and then DeFilippis is facing a case, that you cut that loose end, and that loose end is DeFilippis, and then all of a sudden you're no longer hindered by the potential that he's going to give up the higher ups in the pill mill, and who's taken kick ups from the outfit, and who gave the green light to kill Tony Catalano. So, yeah, we'll finish up by just saying that this could be the final chapter in a very, very blood-stained book of homicides. You're talking 1,000 murders probably. And maybe these three guys, these low-level guys, Tony Catalano, Mike DeFilippis, and Norberto Velez, maybe they were the last three to go. And this new outfit generation, and again, it speaks to what's going on in the LCN and in America as a whole. It's just not a violent organization. Not to say that they don't. Not to say that there can't be violence that comes from the organization, but they're not a organization like for time immemorial up until the last 15 years that was rooted in violence. That violence was a calling card. That it wasn't something way down the line of possibilities. It was the first possibility, and that's not the case anymore. And maybe the fact that you have these these three guys, similar ages, working at all three of them, the lower rungs of the outfit, that they were the last to go. So I don't know. That's the episode. I hope everybody enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe. The Original Gangsters Podcast. We're doing a lot more of these deep dives, OG histories, I like to call them, and kind of getting into the nooks and crannies of some fascinating OC history. This was the Chicago outfit. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're going to try to be bringing more outfit material to the platform. I know a lot of people like the outfit. My first major book release was about the Chicago Mafia. Go check it out, Family Affair, if you've never read it, about the trial back in 2007, the Operation Family Secrets trial. I lived there for a decade, went to law school there. I consider Chicago my second home. So you ask, you shall receive. More outfit content on the horizon. Scott Burnstein, Original Gangsters Podcast, uncovering the underworld, one city, one region, one country at a time. I'll see you guys next time.